wheels can seem like a daunting task to most motorcycle owners, but it's actually not that hard. There is a lot of repetition and some really simple principles to follow. If you take appropriate photographs and measurements before you dismantle your wheels, it is a lot easier than you might think. The wheels on our 1975 Triumph Trident project bike were undamaged and quite sturdy, but very unattractive before the bike was stripped for the rebuild. We'll look at the rear wheel first, but with this particular model, the front wheel is almost the same as the rear, apart from a few minor differences with the hubs and axles. New bearings and axle spacers are lubricated with grease. And then pressed together in a vise. A large washer and tube support the centre race of the bearing to avoid damaging its working surfaces. Everything has been either replaced, replated, or polished ready for reassembly. The rim has been re-chromed and new stainless steel spokes are to be fitted. The hub is made of two halves, each with their own bearing. The larger bearing is located against the shoulder in the hub, and it determines the running position of the wheel. The opposite side bearing is held in the correct position by a tapered distance piece. To start the assembly, a dust seal is inserted and tapped into place. An alloy hub like this will have what I will call bruising that was caused by the spokes as they were fitted previously. This bruising will indicate how the spokes should be fitted during reassembly, and when assembled correctly, all bruise marks will be hidden by the spokes. When you have finished relacing the wheel, the closest spokes to you should be anchored in holes that are slightly clockwise of those that are furthest from you and pointing in the same direction. Assemble the two halves of the hub so that bruising indicates that you have re-established the correct alignment. Inserting a bolt will maintain that relationship accurately. If after you bring the two halves together you realise they are not in the correct alignment, simply rotate one half of the hub one bolt hole in either direction to resolve this problem. It's time to start inserting spokes. I've lubricated the threads of the stainless steel spokes because stainless steel nipples and spokes will chemically weld themselves together in time without this. There are 40 spokes in each wheel. Each flange of the hub has 20 holes. 10 spokes are inserted from the inside of each flange and 10 are inserted from the outside. When the job is completed, there will be 10 groups of 4 made up of 2 inners and 2 outers from each side of the hub. The spokes that are inserted from the outside of each flange appear on the inside of the hub and cannot be fitted once the wheel is laced up, as the spokes inserted from the inside get in the way. For this reason, the spokes fitted from the outside must be inserted first before the rim is put in place. Each spoke should have been supplied with its end bent to suit one of the 4 possible positions. If you have purchased new spokes, they should be grouped in bundles of similar spokes, and if there is any doubt as to where they fit, they should be labelled. Do not mix them up. In general, a spoke inserted from the inner side of the flange will have its end bent to more than 90 degrees, so it can go around the flange and point towards the centre of the rim. Spokes that are inserted from the outside will have their end bent to an angle that is slightly less than 90 degrees, as they will already be pointing slightly towards the centre of the rim. It makes sense to insert batches of 10 similar spokes at a time. The 10 spokes that are to be inserted from outside the sprocket side flange are dropped into place first, leaving every second hole empty. When they're in place, the hub is turned over and the spokes are spread evenly, ready for the second batch of 10 to be inserted. All the spokes inserted from the outside point in the direction of the rotation of the wheel, and all those inserted from the inside, which are seen on the outside of the flanges, point away from the direction of rotation. The next 10 spokes are then dropped into place and all 20 spokes are arranged in one direction to make way for the rim. Looking carefully at the holes in the rim, you will see that they are drilled in groups of 4. Spokes that are 2 holes apart on one side of the hub will be 4 holes apart at the rim. When all 40 spokes are in place, they form 10 groups of 4, 2 spokes coming from the inside and 2 from the opposite direction on the outside to meet at each group of 4 holes. For now, all the spokes will be laying in the same direction. It's time to attach the first 10 spokes. These will come from the top flange. For a T160 Trident, the rear rim will only fit correctly one way round. It is offset towards the disc brake side, so the holes in the rim are angled more towards the sprocket side of the hub. I always put a centre punch mark inside the well of the rim on the disc brake side, so it's easy to identify which way to place it when it's time to reassemble. If you're fitting a new rim, these are usually marked so you know which way around to fit them if they only fit one way. If you have no markings to go by, look carefully at the spoke holes. They should angle more steeply towards the sprocket side. Once you have the rim rotation direction sorted out, it's very easy to connect the spokes to the correct holes in the rim. There are only 4 holes in a repeating pattern. 2 of them will be obviously pointing in the wrong direction, so that reduces the odds of getting this wrong down to 1 in 2. With the disc brake side of the hub facing upwards and attaching a spoke from the top flange to the rim, the correct hole in the rim should be below the centre line of the rim and pointing towards the first chosen spoke. It will be the first hole in any cluster of 4 that seem to be aiming towards a common point. Screw the nipple on loosely and then take the next spoke 2 holes further around the upper flange from the first one and lace it into the hole in the rim 4 holes away from the first one. Continue this until all 10 are in place, and then repeat this process for the spokes coming from the lower flange. These spokes will attach to the rim in the very next holes to the first set of spokes. When you are finished, you will have 20 floppy spokes, 10 from each side, all pointing in the same direction and terminating in pairs of holes in the rim. Once you get a few spokes coming from the opposite direction in place, things will start to stabilise. Insert 1 spoke at a time from underneath the hub through a hole in the top flange and run it in the opposite direction to the first 20. Repeat this until you have the next 10 spokes attached. Every 4th hole in the rim will accept a spoke from the side you are working on. Turn the hub over and insert the remaining 10 spokes into the remaining 10 holes. Screw the nipples on until the end of the spoke is just flush with the bottom of the screwdriver slot. The rear wheel is now ready to have its bearings fitted, which will then allow it to be held accurately and rotated so it can be trued up and made ready for fitting.